Welcome to the Brain Trust Driving Change podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Bloomfield. And whether you're a leader, a coach, a salesperson, or even a parent, this podcast focuses on how to leverage the science of decision making to help you become a more impactful communicator and a driving force for change. Welcome back to the Driving Change podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Bloomfield. Today's guest, he's got some interesting nicknames. So Sports Illustrated has named him the most influential man in sports that you've actually never heard of. Bob Beaudine has an amazing history of what he's accomplished in his life, both personally and professionally. And when you hear some of the things that he's done, and then you hear his life story, and then you hear some of the people he's helped influence in a positive way, I think you're going to be in for a big treat today. Bob is president and CEO of Eastman Beaudine. It's actually a nationally recognized search executive author and a search executive firm. He's also an author. He's an entrepreneur. He's been doing this for a little bit, a couple cups of coffee, as he's been really grown up in this world of executive search firms. He's helped pioneer this executive search concept in professional sports. He's selected to lead the search for the commissioner of Major League Baseball. The Wall Street Journal named Eastman Beaudine the top recruiting firm in college sports. And as I mentioned earlier, Sports Illustrated named him the most influential man in sports you've never heard of. He's this amazing matchmaker. There's a lot of coaches, head coaches, general managers in all different levels, from college to the NFL, to the NBA, to the Major League Baseball, the NHL, that have jobs thanks to Bob Beaudine. He's also been involved in the PGA. He's been involved in the U.S. Olympics. Listen, you're going to learn so much from Bob when it comes to his professional career, but we're also going to dive into, he's a national best-selling author of two books that you probably have read, or at least you've heard of: The Power of Who and the book called Two Chairs, which I can't wait to get into as well. He's been all over the place in media. He's spoken for large stages like at Nike and AIG, ExxonMobil, Madison Square Garden. He's been on Fox and Friends, Fox Business Network, Today Show, and on and on. I mean, yada, yada, yada. The list goes so on. We could do a whole episode just on his accolades. But those of you who have been listeners here for a while know that we don't really care what he's accomplished, do we? We really care about his heart, who he is, and how he can help us walk a little bit more directionally into our purpose. So, Bob, welcome to the Driving Change podcast. It's an honor.
Hey, just so great to be with you, Jeff. Really looking forward to today.
So as I warned you in the pre-show, we only have the one pre-scripted question around here, right? We really want to get to know you and then know you in the early days. Take us back to that origin story. Tell us a little bit about your early days, some of the influences that you had in your life that formed some of the beliefs that led to who you are today.
I was really blessed to have a mom and a dad that were just like great mentors, great spiritual leaders, great people who love to encourage. I tell stories whenever I give speeches today. I'm always out telling people that the Jewish faith does this fantastic thing that my mom and dad always did. And they lay hands on their kids at night as they pray, as they're little kids. And they say, "I love you. I'm proud of you. And I give you the father's and the mother's blessing." And it has such an impact on them. And today, as you know, 70% of men never have ever had their dad say, "I love you." And so my dad and mom were one of those huggers and kissers and constantly. I grew up with, two older brothers and an older sister. So I was the baby, and I got a chance to see everybody do all the things wrong so I could actually figure out what I should do. And I grew up in all sports, doing all the things that are normal, went to SMU. To go to, because my dad was a Notre Dame guy, and my mom wanted some escape because she was from Virginia to get to Texas and all of a sudden be in the sun and be something there. And of course we did that in the future. And I kind of grew up being mentored. My dad was just one of these guys. I think all dads should do is they take their kids out in their business. And we started that when I was, 10 or 11, where my dad would take me out on a trip, and then I'd sit in. My dad started the executive search industry in 1967 out of McKinsey. And so we had offices Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco, 15 countries in Europe. And we just did the top 3 jobs on a retained basis. They hire us, and then we do the top 3 jobs. But I would sit and get a chance, and my dad would make it feel like my opinion counted, right? Whenever my dad was in a meeting, if I just broke into the meeting, like kids like to do, my dad was never like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you interrupted our meeting with Ross Perot or something." He would say, "Come on in. I want you to meet Ross Perot, and this is my son, and da da da, and I'm proud of him." And so it changed your opinion of how you go about treating other people, right? And so it was very important. So my dad was also one of these guys who constantly tried to show you stories during your time as you grew up. I'll never forget, like I was like 13 and we're in Vegas going backstage. My dad, we're up watching Frank Sinatra at the Sands Hotel. And I mean, he's
Wow.
the king. You mean, it's Frank Sinatra. It's like the greatest. Who could have anything better than to be with Frank Sinatra? And so afterwards, my dad says, "Hey, let's go back and meet Frank Sinatra." And I said, "Do you know Frank Sinatra? I mean, can we go backstage?" And he goes, "No, I don't know. We're going to go backstage." Now he says, "As we go back, I don't want you to say anything because there's going to be this large guy at the door who doesn't want us to come in, but I'm going to show you something. I'm going to mentor you here in how to do it." And I said, "Yeah, great. Let's go." And he says, "Okay, so make sure you don't say anything." Okay. So we come up. Here's this imposing figure, and he's big, he's muscular, he's got the whole thing, Tony. And he comes up and he goes, "Hey, Frank Sinatra." And the man looks at my dad and me and says, "Mr. Sinatra's not seeing anybody." And he goes, my dad looks and goes, "Tell him Frank Beaudine and his son Bobby are here." And so the guy starts to think, Mr. Sinatra's not seeing anyone. And then my dad does something really interesting. He leans into him and says, "Tell him Frank Beaudine from Chicago." Now I know the guy's thinking, I wonder if this guy's part of the Gambino family,
Right.
And he's like doing this and he's thinking, "Hey, do I go back or do I not go back?
Right.
Because if I don't go back, I could be fired." So he goes back. My dad knows he's going to go back. My dad, of course, looked at me and he says, "Now watch what happens." Boom, the door's open. Here comes Frank Sinatra towards us. He goes, "Frank, Bobby, how are you? How's Chicago? Come on in." And he goes, and we all of a sudden we're walking in the backstage with Frank Sinatra. And all of a sudden, the guy, he says, "Where's the wife?" My dad goes, "Hey, Martha's coming in tomorrow." He says, "Really?" He says, "Joey, make sure Tony," he says, "make sure we have 2 seats up front for Bob and his mom and this time on me." Now, we hadn't even gone anywhere. Frank Sinatra and all great people, as you know, Jeff, they can't play out like maybe they don't know you. They got to figure this out as they go. And if you have the guts and the confidence to just come in and say Frank Beaudine for Chicago, you're coming in. My dad and I, we sit and talk about everything. While I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, and this is what I want people to understand, is that you got to know who you are, whose you are, and the path you're called to do that. And so when someone stops, there's always something on everything that you want to do today in your life. And you're going to come up against something that's going to be a door that's not wanting to open to you. You know what we're doing? We're going in. We're telling them who we are. Your energy that you have between us is what makes great friendships, great marriages, great teams. I mean, as I go out and talk to college teams and give motivational talks, it's all about the energy. When as a CEO of an executive search firm, everywhere, no matter what, I can tell who wins in the first 5 minutes. And that all goes back to your original question, which is, so what the heck? How did you get to where you are? And it all started with little moments like this. Time's our enemy, but timing's our best friend. And everything great that's ever happened to you has happened in 5 minutes. Everything bad's happened in 5 minutes. And that means that you and I can do something in 5 minutes that's life-changing. We can get involved in a person. We can change their situation for all of a sudden a suicide. We can change their situation where all of a sudden they're never going to get the job. And we give them one tip and all of a sudden they get it, And so it's amazing. I can tell you 100 stories that my mom and dad did to me that by the time I got into search, all of a sudden, after I ran brand management, with a great guy who he created the name Windows for Microsoft. And I mean, so you get to be around people who imprint something to you. And you and I are, and Matt are like friends with like Zig Ziglar, right? And he grew up in my neighborhood, and so grew up at my country club. And one of the things that I've always found is when you're around people like that, you're a little bit of each person, right? As you start to go, I got God and I got Jesus in me. All of a sudden, I've got my mom and my dad. And I've got other people, because you are who you associate with. And so I, one time at a Zig Ziglar meeting, I screamed out to them, "I'm Zig Ziglar." and, and then I thought about it. Mrs. Ziglar, the little redhead's right in front of me, and she's like glowing. And I said, I said, "You're also Zig Ziglar. That's why you're here to do this, is that there's some parts of people that when you see their energy and their love and what they love, right? Because you can never be successful at what you like. You got to love it." So that's my intro to the initial side of how did all this come? Because I had God just opened up doors for people, and my mom and dad were the people do it. And so that means that you and mom and dads who are listening, you got some people. And when you start to figure out and got your eyes open, everything opens.
I love it, man. What a great opening story. What a great origin story with so many points of purpose woven into it. And now I'm all fired up, right? Because, the emotional contagion, and we teach this, right? The neuroscience behind it. The emotional contagion is real. And the energy that you give off is the energy that gets reflected back to you. And so if your mindset is one that's fixed and it's one that's looking for what's not going to work, then you're going to find what doesn't work. But if your mindset is one of positivity and energy and purpose and determination, then you're going to give off that kind of energy, and you're going to be able to get so much further ahead, which I love that. It's challenging and convicting as well, right? Because I am the father of 3 children. My daughter's about to graduate college. My middle son's about to graduate high school. Our youngest daughter, Princess Priya, we adopted from India when she was 2. She's 10 now. And I challenge myself all the time to say, am I living my life in such a way that one day my kids will use me as the sage in their story? Or will they use me as the example of what they learned not to do? I'm hoping it's the positive energy that your dad instilled in you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And my mom did the same, right? And so that's what's so nice, is that everybody has moments in your life. We'll get to all of those as we go.
I love it. So just on the professional side for a second, because I think people are really will be really fascinated. So your dad started basically the executive search industry, and then it was mostly, it sounded like, corporate. Did he get involved in this pro sports stuff, or was that when you kind of came along? And how did that whole story happen when you got pulled into the sports world?
So great. So for the first 12 years of my life, so no one had ever done any search in sports, ever. No coaches, no athletic director. The only thing you'd ever see is maybe a Wilson Sporting Goods, right? Something that people are at Champion Sports, where I was doing maybe their head of apparel, okay, right. The president of apparel. But they didn't really have that. And the reason is that, the Bobby Knights and the big the big name people would tell you who their next guy was, who was going to get that job. It was always done by the good old boy network in that process of somebody they liked and they would put into it. So I got into this, and I spent 10 years, and I'm doing searches and manufacturing and real estate, and I'm doing all these things. And what's interesting about that is that you're not really got your head up always to see who these people you are, because, everywhere along my path, God had given me specific people that helped me later in my life in the area I was wanting to go. But I had to see it, right? You had to kind of connect the dots. And sometimes, where most people are is they're minding their P's and Q's, got their head down. Of course, see how that's working for them. It's going nowhere. And so initially, I came about 10 or 11 years. And finally, I looked at my dad, and I said, and he said, "Hey, so man, you're doing so good. You're making good money. You're finding great people." I said, so here, Dad. So listen, I should do what I love and what I'm really, really good at. Okay, so what are you talking about? And I said, well, when I do a search for like a president of a manufacturing company, at the end of the search, I get a tour of the plant. But if I got the head of marketing for the NBA, we'd get All-Star Weekend. And he said, does anybody do that? And I said, no. And I said, but I'm going to. And he says, okay, so listen, I love it. He says, you can't give up what you got, though, until you go get that. And so you got to start developing those relationships that you have. Well, okay, so this is like the beginning of when I was starting to think and write The Power of Who. Okay, that you already knew everyone you needed to know, which nobody really understood that. And so what's the thing? What's the odds? The guy who's on our board of directors that I'm doing search work for, a guy named Bill Bartholomew, he is in the insurance industry, and he's the chairman of Frank B. Hall Insurance, and he's on another couple groups, and he's the head of the Parks Board with Mayor Daley in Chicago, because that's where our headquarters was, Chicago, and I had opened our Dallas office. And so I'm in a meeting one time with my dad and Bill, and my dad blurts out to Bill, "Hey, so Bob wants to do sports." And he says he wants to open up that industry. And Bill goes, "Wow, interesting, fantastic." And so Bill asked me if I'd leave the room for a second because he wanted to talk to my dad. And then they bring me back in. I had no idea what they're talking. Bill had, when in his early portion, had kind of got in and been the managing kind of partner of doing the deal that moved the Milwaukee Braves to the Atlanta Braves. And he was their largest outside stockholder, which I really wasn't aware of. But I did know that he first found Hank Aaron. Get out of here. I mean, this, it's in your backyard, right? All this stuff.
Right.
And so Bill looks at me and goes, "So Bob, I talked to your dad, and so he said, listen, I want that I really love the idea that you should do this." And he says, "I'm about to embark on a search, and you don't know, but I'm like the head of the search committee for Major League Baseball for the new commissioner of baseball. My opening search, Jeff, is the commissioner of baseball." God is so good. He's a ninja. And so the thing that I tell you we have to stop is anyone who's listening to this kind of goes, "Oh, okay, that could never happen to me." No, don't say, who am I? Come on, stop it. The difference of what I did is, listen, Zig Ziglar used to say, you don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great. And you have to blurt out in your mouth, and you know it better. You have to say what your dream is. You have to dream out loud with people. Now, that was something I had been dreaming about for 5 years, and I've been thinking about it, and I've been studying it. My dad would always give me grief when we were on on an airline, and he'd say, "You should be reading the Wall Street Journal, not the sports page." When I got the search and got the largest fee in the firm's history for doing the commissioner of baseball, he looks and goes, "Keep reading the sports page."
That's right.
And so I interviewed the 50 biggest people in all the world. I mean, everybody wants to be commissioner of baseball, right? So I interviewed Colin Powell and Schwarzkopf, and I interview, governors and generals, and the guy who ran, who created the TV show, Cheers. The stories that I can tell you of people who ran IBM and Disney and all of these, they all wanted. I was one time at Colin Powell's. We were having a beer. He's fixing his car, okay, and we're talking about the job. And his wife comes out. "Now listen, Bob, under no circumstances is he going to be the commissioner of baseball. He's going to make us money in writing these books and doing this stuff and all that." He said, "Honey, it's the commissioner of baseball. Would you just leave Bob and I alone?"
Oh, that's funny. So that's how it started. So let's play. I'll play the other side of it, because people that are listening out there, to your point, might be like, "Well, he just fell into it then. He just got lucky." You hear that all the time, right? You just got lucky.
Agreed. Yeah.
So how do you answer that?
So there's no aspect of this, on what I call luck. The answer is, first, for 5 years, I'm in the business. I'm learned the business. I spent 12 years studying this business. No one had ever been in this category. So every single entrepreneur, every single inventor is over here doing something, and then they see something that no one else has. And it's when I was young, I go back, I loved Sherlock Holmes. I did. I used to think that Sherlock Holmes had this uncanny ability of seeing what other people couldn't see that was hidden right in plain sight. And so I loved hearing this story. So one day Sherlock Holmes is out camping with Watson, and they're camping in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, he comes out and he says to Watson, "What do you see?" Watson says, "Well, it's lightly raining. And, I see that the clouds and maybe occasionally a star, maybe the moon." And he says, "But it's getting colder and it's lightly raining." And he says, "Sherlock, what do you see?" And Sherlock says, "Someone stole our tent." Okay, so hold it a second. But the interesting isn't that not what happened in the pandemic? While you were doing this, thinking nothing's going on and you're sitting at home, they're stealing this from you. All these things were stolen from us. It's never changed in all our lives. All the time that you're doing is something. I want every one of your listeners to think of this first. God created you to be compared to no one. You do one thing better than anyone in the world. You have a gift, and it has to be brought out so the rest of the world can see it. The issue today, and that's my whole life's purpose in mind, is to encourage people to get onto their dream, to do that, to be bold, to have this. You already know everyone you need to know, and I'm going to introduce you personally to the King of Kings at 2 chairs. I mean, can you possibly imagine? I eliminate all bureaucracy in the aspect because we were given specific people to help us in your dream. You just haven't told me what your dream is. And so, like, I say to people all the time that, oh, I love the power of who, really? So name the 3 specific jobs and the 3 specific people you'd like to join. And he goes, I'd like to be in manufacturing. That's not a specific company, a specific person. So there's some things that we got to do. And with God is we got to sit and ask. And then when we do, you got to yield and surrender that he's going to open up some doors and then look, because, just one of my favorite quotes. It's a guy named G.K. Chesterton, and he says this: the one thing in life that gives radiance above other things is there's something great just around the corner. Are you looking for it?
And isn't it funny how, not funny actually, but we talk a lot about how our biology is, we're kind of biologically wired for self-preservation. So our brain is kind of in risk mitigation mode all the time, but it's not the optimal state, right? The optimal state is on the other side of that, is looking for the positivity of what's to come. And I love your philosophy on this. And when I think about the 2 books you wrote, I'm like, oh, these are so perfectly aligned. I can see where God kind of wove this together through Bob. Is that, the easiest command in the Bible is that, we're supposed to love God and love others. So if we have this great vertical relationship, then it's going to activate the horizontal relationships, which is going to allow all of us to function within our purpose. And basically, that's exactly what you did in those 2 books. You talked about, here's the horizontal relationships and the power of who. And then if you have the vertical relationship, it activates the power of who, right? So I'd love to get into that a little bit, because I know your power, I don't want to blur the 2 together, but there has to be enough similarities to the way that you downloaded that it came out in 2 different books, yet they're so perfectly aligned to how we're instructed to operate.
Yeah. And so, so I started doing 2 chairs in 1977. God wouldn't let me write that book for 40 years.
Why do you think that is?
It was specific to him. He wanted me to spend such a time and have such a breadth and a body of issues and troubles and things that you go through in your life to be prepared. Okay, where he's building up such a concept of faith in you, right? Because that's really what happens to pretty much everyone today is that you come to crossroads and there's no neutral ground. You're either going to have faith or fear. You're going to have faith or no peace. And so everybody has that. I mean, when people come into my office and they've lost their job and everything's wrong, and they got a friend who knows me, and they come in and they sit with me, my opening thing to them is, congratulations, this is like the greatest day of your life. And they look at me like, huh? And right. I go, right. You hated that job.
Right.
I mean, what are you talking about? So the issues, you got divorced in that job. You were a butthead in that job. You got to do something new. What if God has got you to this stage, and we could look forward and all of a sudden everything to which to do? So you're exactly correct. I had to do he wouldn't let me write this until I had enough of a body of experience to be able to write The Power of Who, which on my dad's deathbed, he says to me, so you're going to write 5 books. And I go, I can't write a memo. And I don't even know what you're talking about. And he goes, no, you've been saying this same thing over and over and over again. And so when I kind of came to grips initially because that all these people that were trying to get jobs, trying to find their goals and dreams, what do they do in a time of trouble? How do they find their mates? All of this stuff, of this what the world has always taught us in college, in mastermind meetings, in conferences, and how many things have we gone to in our lives that we all of a sudden we go to these things and they all teach the same thing. You should do networking, Jeff. And so okay, so what the heck does that mean? Well, it's faceless. I mean, I don't know what networking means. And so, because I know networking is not working, because we've been taught the opposite. We've been taught that friends and business are taboo. And so let me get this correct. We're supposed to work with a bunch of people we don't know and don't trust. And so the question is, to get to this job over here, I mean, so I'm on the Today Show and I turned to them and said, so if you're in a car accident, are you, who are you going to call? Your family, your friends? Or are you going to call the person that you just met at a networking meeting? And all of a sudden I got Tony Schwartz here. The answer is no, I'm going to call somebody who I know I can trust. Well, okay, hold it a second. So like I get to colleges, I get to meetings with people and I say, so what if I told you the 3 things that people think about when you walk in the room? Now, if I tell you this, if whether you're going for a big deal, a loan, okay, anything that you're really wanting, a job, I'm going to give you now the test answers before the test. Okay, here's what they're thinking. 1, do I know you? So why are you in my office? Why are we meeting? If I know their best friend and they recommended me, I have an 87% chance versus a 13% chance to get the deal or the job. 87.
Wow.
If they like you, which is now what I do, is I say, hey, so I introduce you to one of my buddies, and then you sit with my buddy who you really want to do something with, and you say, and you make fun of Bob, and all of a sudden the 2 or 3 of you are just, 2 of you are just laughing. Now you're at 94% because he likes you. That's number 2. Do I know you? Do I like you? Now hold a second. 94%. We haven't even talked about the job requirements yet. Why is that true? Because he's his best friend. He knows. He already told everything about you, why you're the perfect person for this job and that they got to do it. He just hadn't met you yet. So now he likes you. And we already know that's true. You know why? Because if talent was the reason everyone got jobs, we wouldn't have Congress and Senate. I mean,
Absolutely.
Come on. These people are ridiculous. And so the third thing they're thinking is, hey, are you the best for me? Now, that's such an interesting line because they're going to walk you in. They've listened to you. They like you. Then they're thinking, okay, so Jeff, let me tell you what I'm really looking for. And now, I mean, I sat with Zig Ziglar one time. He said, Bob, what do you think of this line? And I said, what? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I said, I wish I wrote that line. And he goes, it's 2 words short. And I go, what? He said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them.
That's it.
Okay. So this is, are you the best for me?
Yeah.
So this 6% is really important because they're going to find out how much it is. So when in an interview, when people are trying something, they can sense really quick your whole countenance and everything first, whether you are sitting at 2 chairs and you come in and you know who you are. They're going to sit and they're going to see whether you know their friend. They're going to see something around this. And so, listen, the top 1% of the country does everything with their friends and family. They told everyone else to get in line and online. I ain't getting in line and online. We had 40 million people who just hated their jobs and quit during the pandemic. 69% of the country believe that a bad day at the beach is better than a good day at work. 80% of the country, are not using their number 1 talent. So that means we're spending billions of dollars training people in jobs they don't want to do. And so as a result, the trailing conversation home is what? Trouble. And so that's why 62% of the country are getting divorced. Yeah. And so we have this trouble. It's just bad. And so my thought of the first aspect of Power Who was, I'm going to give you permission to talk to your friends. And your friends is who you do business with. So when I joined my dad's firm, he said, I got 3 things I want you to understand about executive search. And this will change your whole success. Okay, I'm ready. And so I'm thinking, because he's a McKinsey, Mensa, it's going to be very technical. And so I'm ready. So I got my pencil and I write down. And he says, make friends. Okay. Number 2, help your friends in every way possible. Wow. 3, don't be surprised if you do a lot of business with your friends. So listen, so you want my success? I only do business with my friends. I only do business with people who will actually say they love me. And we go back and forth in that there's 180 words in the Greek language for love. They're all better than like. Okay. And we have one. So I love my wife. We have our 40th wedding anniversary coming up and in September. But I also love tacos. So is it confusing? No. So I could say your wife's name is what?
Hazel.
So what a great name. So just think, she and I could be great friends, and you would never be bothered by me telling her I love you, because there's 180 different variations of that. Okay. And the answer is, I have a wife. I got 3 daughters. I got a granddaughter. I mean, I got things. And the answer is, so what our problem in life is this. When you're wanting something that you never had, you got to do some things you've never done. The first aspect of the power of who is I have to reconnect with the people God gave us. And God gave us some people that eliminate bureaucracy. No more mass emails, no more sending out, dear sir, to whom it may concern, dear recruiter. I get 250,000 of those a year. Dear recruiter, that's an oxymoron, right? And so people ask me all the time, so how should I write my resume? People don't hire resumes, they hire people. And they go, really? And I said, listen, you already know everyone you need to know. How is that possible? God gave you specific people to help you in ways you never imagined. And those people weren't happenstance acquaintances. They were strategically given to you to help you find that place in life you've always dreamed about. But what if we missed destiny? What if finding our next big job, getting our next big deal, getting our mom into a hospital is not about who we don't know, but whom we've neglected, our friends? Because we hate to ask our friends for help. Right. We hate to ask our mom and dad for help. Seriously, they're not doing your job. They're friends. If you and I, Jeff, are best friends and I asked you for help, would you help me?
Absolutely.
Why would you deny me the same joy of helping you?
Right.
Because it never works in reverse. And people don't like this. And this has been a demonic approach to keeping you in this stupid box, right? Because when I tell people, look, this is what you want in your job. You should go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. You should have tools in this job. And the number one is that you're empowered to do your job. You should be good for your family. Now, normally I'd put family first, but I'm not even talking to my wife about me moving to another job if I didn't have celebrated and tools, right? We should get a legacy, or we should win championships. I should be able to knock the park, out of the park here on my limits and be able to make this. And then last, I should make money. These 5 things are all even. I'm not taking anything without those 5. And so the problem is that led to a spot where all of a sudden you had to figure out some more spiritually. Now, I'll never forget. I want to tell you one little story before all of a sudden you get me into where you want to go on anything else. But listen, my dad was out of work when I was young. And he had gotten it with a company, and then they were doing some things that they shouldn't be doing. And he just left. He just said, hey, I can't do it. I'm not going to be involved in that. And so he was out of work for 6 months. But our family never knew that. The kids never knew it. He got dressed in the morning like he was taking us out to school, and then everything was good. And then he turned back and started his job search. I mean, it was a different generation. When I worked for my dad, he would always tell me, he said, now listen, people are going to come into this office and they're going to be looking for a job and dropping their resume off. It's very vulnerable to be out of work. You don't know who you are anymore. I had my identity. I tell people all the time, if who you are is what you have and what you have is taken from you, then who are you? Yeah. Your identity is not in that stupid job. Your identity is in Christ. Your identity is in a situation where the King of Kings, has named you. He came in and gave a new kingdom. This kingdom has made it so that you are the son of the king. Your wife's a daughter of the king, and you have rights and citizenship to do great and mighty things. But I have to get you to start to understand who you are to be able to do that. So my dad looked at me and he says, now listen, when that guy comes to the door, he says, I understand what that's like. He says, you're going to go run out, meet him, put your arm around him, bring him back in, get him a cup of coffee, and you're going to spend time with him. He says, now listen, Bob, there's something great in everyone. It's your job, Bob, to find it.
Mm.
And so that was another, all of a sudden, when I figured out that I had to present 6 or 7 candidates for every job, and that 6 of them weren't going to get it and one was, what do you do with these other 6? Well, somebody asked me at a real estate thing the other day and said, I hate telling these other people they didn't win the house and da-da-da. What would you do, Bob? And I said, well, I have 6 that don't get it, and it's my favorite thing to tell them they don't get it. And they go, what? And I go, I tell them that God's got a better thing for them.
Yeah, something better
What are you talking about? What kind of mindset? You're the luckiest person in the world. You didn't get that house.
Right.
Something great's ahead.
Now, let me ask you this before we move into the 2 chairs category. One of the things, and obviously I don't want to dive down in the whole neuroscience path on it. It'll take us forever. But I wonder sometimes, you ask the question is if we were best friends and you asked me for help, if I would help you, and I said yes, and you said, well, why would you not do you the favor of doing it back? Do you think that part of that is people, maybe it's false humility, but a lot of times it's they know they haven't invested enough in the relationship to serve other people, that they feel like they don't deserve the right to ask for help because they haven't invested enough in others? Is that part of it, you think?
Well, I mean, the problem that starts is that, we have so many issues happening. On one side, there's a huge amount of dads in the country who first, their dads never told them they love them, right? They never did any of that. And so we have a huge issue that, hey, I worked really hard to get where I might, I had to walk up the hill 16 miles to get to my deal to do this, and you're going to trudge that way.
Right.
And that's how you're going to learn. The answer is, if I open a door for you, that's a gift. You have to receive it.
Right.
So one of the hardest parts we got is that God says that you have to ask, seek, and knock with him. And if you do, and you have to then expect with faith and then receive the blessing before you get it. So you ask him with a belief system that says, I'm going to do it. So like if I said to my daughters at Christmas, they don't like send me, they don't ask me, tell me about gifts. They send me the Amazon picture. It's not like I wanted just a bike. I want a blue Schwinn bike who does the following wheels, the following things on it, and it's got all the things. Yeah, I know it. And so they know it is. Our God is not like a God who doesn't understand all the details. So one of the hard parts for our mindset that you're talking about is, yes, first off, we've been taught first in the South portions of our country, and is that asking's rude.
Right.
Okay. So, and for sure, hey, people love to tell me, oh, well, Bob, I got friends and they didn't do it. Yeah, I know. So how many times they come over to your house for a barbecue? Oh yeah. We're talking about acquaintances. We're not talking about friends. You're talking about the difference between friends and friendly. A friend is different than acquaintance. A friend helps you now. An acquaintance wishes you well.
Yeah.
A friend is someone who knows the song in your heart, and they can sing it back to you when you've forgotten the words. Friends are secret keepers. Friends will do things that mere acquaintances wouldn't even consider to do for you. And so what we're happening is this. We've been so knocked down spiritually that, hey, hey, I'm not a really good person. I'm not this. I didn't get that. Why would God want to talk to me? And I go, because he digs you and he's done this. I mean, he's already paid that price. He's not coming back. He's not dying again. He did it once and for all. And your job is to go and receive it and to go in and jump into this process. And when you do, everybody wants a personal experience, right? And to me, the biggest problem with business today is it's transactional instead of transformational. And CEOs aren't spending the time saying, hey, it's personal. Well, if it's personal, then I know your name. I know everything about you. It's the same way in interviewing. I tell people, I said, don't go in being interesting. Go in being interested. Know more about Jeff than you know about Bob.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I had a conversation just this week with the head of a really, really large organization. And I was talking to him about the power of shared vision and inside the organization, and how we believe with our neurocoaching model, through the research, we found that you got to have an organizational vision, then every leader has to have a leader vision, and then every employee has to have an employee vision, and you have to align those 3 together. And he looked at me dead serious. He said, so I'm supposed to know like the vision of every one of my employees, like what they care about? Like I'm supposed to know that? I'm like, yeah, because that their personal vision is what will make them want to get up and come into this office every day, because they're working at a place that they feel believes that they're helping them advance their personal vision, so long as it helps advance the company's vision, right? When you can align those two things together, it's magic. But you got to care. You got to care enough to go find out what they care about, right? Same as customer conversations, but it's happening inside our company's culture so much, is that it's so transactional, to your point, that we look at employees as simply, cogs in the wheel or in the machine or the process, and not individuals that are designed by God for a purpose. And how do we put them in the right seat on the right bus that highlights that purpose? We got to know that.
I know that's why you're successful, because that's you tapped into the fact that people matter most. Our heart knows it. God taught us, and yet we forgot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's happened on a rampant basis.
And you think about all the pressures of it. And I know exactly, this, you said it earlier, like this is a design by the spiritual forces of darkness, really, that's come against us to put it this transactional world, why social media is telling you who you are, all these things. It elevates our adrenaline and our stress. So our people are walking around every day with exceedingly high levels of adrenaline and cortisol in our systems, which causes us to draw inward. It keeps us in fight or flight mode, and it doesn't allow us to even do the things that you're talking about. So it takes a really strong person to break that, and have people in their life who help them break those chains, that puts us right in the position of really believing where our identity is, because that's where the power lies, right?
I just love that. And that's 100%. And really the reason I love executive search is because I can bring that one person. I can change the entire culture. I mean, I go back. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm doing real estate or finance or taking your company public or doing the one thing that you need. But when I did it back in 2003, and I put in Scott Drew as the basketball coach for Baylor University after a murder. And at the same time, they had the whole Koresh thing happening. If you remember the cult thing happening.
Yeah.
So Waco wasn't having its greatest days. They weren't doing Chip and Joanna. They hadn't have Chip and Joanna, which had made now this town thriving with Scott Drew and all the rest. And so I'll never forget that the president came to my office and said, "Hey, can you find me someone? I've heard about you." First off, I took that as such a honor. I mean, that there's some facet of a reputation that someone's going to say something about you, right? And he said, "I heard about you. I got to come meet you." And he said, "Can you find me a basketball coach who can look me in the eye and say that Jesus Christ is Lord and win me the Big 12 championship?" "Yes, I can." And he goes, "Well, where were you when I was hired my football coach? You didn't ask me."
Exactly. You didn't ask.
And so, then, it's so cool that he goes and turns that into a national championship team, right? He won the national championship. And it's like that's kind of the story is that for people is, listen, it doesn't happen overnight. So when you write a book, you got to be in it for the journey, because if you don't like writing, you can't write it. Right. And so if you can't sustain a job you have if you like it. There's no sports teams that win national championships liking each other. They got to love each other, and they have to say out loud, "I love my team."
Yep.
And then guess what? The other team feels this thing that, as you know, is that God set up spiritual laws. They work whether you do it or not. I mean, there's universal laws. I mean, hey, listen, you drop it, you're falling.
Right. Yep.
And so the answer is, but in some of these, if you're mean to someone, they're going to be mean to you.
Well, it's so true. We live in a world now. It's so instant gratification, right? It's fast food nation. We want everything now. We want it instant, because look, we have everything at our fingertips. So why not have our purpose at our fingertips? Why not have? We want to be. If I want to be a singer when I'm 14, I should get a record contract by 15, right? Like we want it now. But to your point, I love that you highlighted this earlier with the God. He seasoned you for 40 years. Before he allowed you to write 2 chairs. Historically, when you look at all the heroes, even of the scripture, rarely did God just show up and say, "It's your time, go." There was a seasoning of time, and sometimes decades before, the purpose was given and the payoff was achieved, right?
Yeah. And for people who don't understand it, so my life quote is John 16:33. Who would pick this as a quote? "In this world you will have trouble. Be of good cheer." Seriously, can you have good cheer if you're like in trouble? Why would you want that? Who in the right mind? But God had put that into me because you had to know something about him to be able to be cheerful in the midst of the trouble. Because between every stimulus and every response is a space, and you get the power to choose. That's your response. And so I tell people is the measure of a man or a woman is how you respond in times of trouble or really ridiculous success, because I'm going to see some of the true colors and how you were really, how you grew up. And listen, in life, you're going to fail a bunch of times. So, and you're going to have people. I mean, if I could tell you over 40 years, how many people I helped get a job and then they never gave me ever a search ever again. No, I don't, it's not, I work under a different thought process. I'm not bothered. I thought it would be logical that they would, since I was smart enough to get them.
Right.
But I always try to teach people today, listen, you and I are up for an audience of one.
Yeah.
And so when we keep our eyes on God and we get to him and seek him out, I tell people the whole point of the 2 chairs is how you start your day matters. I mean, you got to get up. I leap out of bed to do 2 chairs, right? And so it kind of does some of that. So I know you got other questions.
Well, yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. So tell us the premise, because there could be a lot of people out there listening who don't know 2 chairs. They've not read the book. They don't even understand the concept. Give us a little bit of the concept and what you in the book you go through, obviously in very, very much in detail. So if you're listening, you haven't gotten the book, you're going to want to get it after you hear Bob explain it. But give us a little bit of the premise behind it, where it came from, and then how do you do it? Like, what's the whole recipe here?
So again, and always keep in mind, because you just said this, Griff, there's a horizontal aspect that's so good with the power of who that stops bureaucracy, and there's a vertical relationship that stops bureaucracy, right? In this site, and again, that's what all of us really want, because hey, it's not fair that all of a sudden the some big name person here can get a lot of things and I can't do it because I'm in the hood and I'm somewhere down the line. No, you have the same God. You have a vertical relationship. You're the son of the king. Now the question is, can I hear and can I start to do it? So when I was young, my dad, because was my best friend. I mean, he would do this and he was so smart, and he could do a crossword, New York Times cross. He was a Mensa. He could do a New York Times crossword puzzle in 5 minutes. I'm on spit, that was not my skill. And so I'm very clever, good in sales and on other aspects. And so what I look to my mom kind of as my spiritual guru. When I grew up loving God, because we grew up in a family that we'd go to church, and we go to the parish. And as long as we were done in 20 minutes and we could watch the Chicago Bears, that would be good. And then, of course, I'm not going to read the Bible because that's what Father Mulcahy's supposed to do. And that's his job. We pay him to do that. And so, but there was no personal relationship. I loved him, and I found I loved him like you love a flag of the country. It's an institutional thing. My mom, she didn't like any of that. She kind of drew a line in the sand. And so my mom, she would, I came to her one day and I said, so how do I find my goals, my dreams? How would I find my mate? What do I do in ridiculous times of trouble? Oh my gosh, you'd love my mom. My mom, she looked, those are really good questions, Bob. Of course, I don't have the answer, but I know who does. But I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And that's what this book is based on. 3 simple questions, very disruptive questions. Okay. Just based on where you are in your life. Because if you're in trouble, they're much more disruptive rather than when you're really happy and everything's like cruising, right? And we have seasons of both, okay? And then 7 things to do in a time of crisis. And as you know, having read it, I mean, I write stories that are going to try to make you cry and laugh, and I'm not doing PowerPoints and showing you deep stuff, because I know no one has the time or the mentality for that. The question we really want to know is him. And so she said, okay, so I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. And what you'll love, Jeff, is that I do the same thing. So if you're coming into me, you got trouble, you're really going to come in and try to talk to me about the power of Bob. I didn't write that book. I wrote The Power of Who. It's you and your who. But they're going to try to do it. And I find out they're in deep trouble. And they're at a crossroad that they, like I was, like, I need some answers. And so My mom was clever in asking these questions that would then get me into the next stage if I needed it. So the first, she says, so I tell people, listen, I'm going to ask you the same questions my mom asked you. And so you can't get mad at me. You'd have to get mad at my mom. Okay. And so
Yep.
I say to the person, so they're out of a job. They're in some trouble. I was looking for the goals. And so I said, so my mom turned to me and she said, so Bob, do you think God knows your situation? Yeah, I do. And she goes, not only does he know, but he wants you to know he knows. And so the highest priority in a time of crisis is to get your mind above it.
Right.
Everyone knows how to do that. Who's a psychologist? You know how to do it as a coach. You're very good to wrap them and go, let's go up a little higher and look at this situation. Let's do a little out of body experience and we'll look at you and we'll talk about it, non-emotionally. And so got to get our mind above it. And the highest thought up there is what? God. And so God doesn't have 6 telephone lines for 7 billion people. He doesn't work on, natural disasters and heart attacks and pandemics and ISIS. He has this unique ability to be in 8 billion homes at the same time. Okay. It's because it's really cool. So she says, so number 2, is this too hard for him to help you? No. And she goes, well, it's too hard for you though. And I go, well, you got me there. And she goes, does God have a good plan for you? That's the question. And so I said, you think God has a good plan for you? And I said, yes. And she goes, what is it? I have no idea. And she goes, exactly, 2 chairs. One for you, one for God, in your place. I tell people all the time, you own chairs? So, kids say to me all the time, so Mr. Beaudine, I don't go to church. Do you own chairs? Do you have any chairs? Yeah, sure. I said, so what if? Because I have some people who they don't believe in God yet, right? I don't care. Right. And so they say it to me and I say, hey, so thank you so much for being transparent. So I say, if there's a 1% chance the guy who created the whole world would come to your place, not make you go to him. You don't have to go out. Just wake up, sit down. Don't read I'm not asking you to read a devotional and vicariously live through someone else having a good conversation with God. I don't want you to read his autobiography. Don't read The Power Who while you're talking to me. He don't want you to do that either. You're going to get 1 minute to talk and he gets 4. Would you meet him? Everybody says yes. I said, I thought you were like an atheist. And so he goes, I'm intrigued. I go, okay. And so that's the answer. So I said to my mom, and she goes, so Bob, you need to do this. And my mom and dad, when I came home my junior year of college, my mom was reading the Bible and the whole half of the house had already changed. I could feel it. I was like looking at my dad going, what the heck is mom doing? And he goes, I think she's going through her time of life. And I said, and then I came home my senior year at spring break and the whole house. Can you imagine that by having a relationship with God, the atmosphere around your house, around your business? So my business, that I tell people all the time, you want to hire me to do your search, because the owner and CEO of my firm is God. So I said, I have the Holy Spirit and he's really, really good at this. I've seen his resume. Yeah. He never loses.
He has the largest network.
He's got it all. And he knows exactly no matter where and how hard this is. And then I've been doing it for 40 years. And the 2 of us and my team who are all in one accord to what? It's not about me. It's about you. I'm trying to find someone who fits you, but I got to get the 4 best people in the room for you. So when I started this, I said to people, so listen, can you talk 1 minute and just lay it down and then be quiet and listen? Say every day we hear the enemy speak, don't we? And,
absolutely.
But if we hear one word from God, we're schizophrenic. And so what people say to me is, so listen, so like God going to really talk to me and da-da-da. I go, yeah, not only is he going to talk, but I said, write it down because he's going to say things. Well, how would I know? I said, so when your wife calls you on the phone and she says, hey, hun, what are you doing? Do you say, who is this? No. Why? Well, I know their voice. Jesus says, my sheep know my voice. Right. You'll know. I said, I don't have to explain this to you. I said, so when you come into the room, when you do what you're asked to do, which he's been doing for a whole history of time, wanting to get you to the room, he called the meeting. You didn't. He's been waiting for the people right now. I have people who are listening right now who are saying, are you a CEO of an executive search firm and the leading guy in sports and you do all this stuff and you're telling me that God's going to meet with me? Absolutely. And it's going
That's
to,
awesome.
you better buckle up. I can tell you that I've been having the same meeting for mentoring, advice, and daily guidance since 1977. And all my success. So now we go back to one of your questions that says, hey, so seriously, you just got the luck since 1977. Okay. All my success comes from that morning meeting, starting out and seeking first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, praising him and repenting for the crap that I do, and then asking him for stuff, and then surrendering my life and believing in all of a sudden in him, and going out in faith, because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith calls things that are not as though they were. So all of this. Now, Jeff, I had no idea when I was writing this book, okay, that trouble comes into your life, right? And God was waiting 40 years for me to go through a bunch of trouble. So people look at you sometimes, they go, oh, you're successful, you got all this and da da da. So in June, I got a call, and my granddaughter's on the phone, and my grandson had drowned in the pool at 13 months old. And so my wife and I we just looked at each other. And so my wife's thought of her life quote is Philippians 4:6-8, and it's be anxious for nothing, make your request known. And mine here is, in times of trouble, be a good cheer. That was not our first two thoughts.
Right.
And we were on a mad rush to their house. And my son-in-law had snuck through a dog hole, and we had just been on vacation with everybody, and we're in a mad rush. He had resuscitated him. And so we had 7 days in the ICU. Now I had no idea. 40 years earlier, I was thinking about this book, and then I had written the book in 2015, 16. I kind of in 17, I was thinking about it, and then I started to write it. And I was writing it for this 7 days in the ICU.
Wow.
So we had been on vacation. I mean, I think about this. This kid, his name was Beau, Beau, for my last name, Burns. And so I wanted my son-in-law, who's a big lug of a lineman. I said to him, we should just make it easy and make his middle name Dean, so it could be Beaudine Burns.
That's right.
And of course,
perfect.
He didn't like that idea. And so he had an uncle named Brocious. And so I said, Bro, come on. And so his first day in the ICU, we're in a disaster. My youngest daughter has a dream of Jesus, seeing Beau up in heaven, playing in a stream with Jesus like in the background. And she can't believe it. And he's playing, having good. On day 7, my daughter says to me, I wonder what Beau Brocious Burns means. And we look it up, and it means beautiful, eternal stream. So on day 8, he gives his heart to a 4-month-old, and who had never been home from the hospital. He gives his liver, and now he's 11 months old, that kid. He gives his liver to a 2-year-old boy that was on our ICU floor. And after day 1, you're in chaos, right? And our family locked arms at day 2, which is what I'm telling people. Listen, that God knows your situation. If it's not good, he's not done with this story. He's going to rewrite this story in a way that's going to be so overwhelming. And you have no ground. You're either going to be faithful or fearful. And so we chose to be faithful, right? And so we're in the midst of this fight. We do it. And while the second day just locked arms, in comes God into the room. And he promises in Philippians 4:6-8 that the God of peace, of all surpassing peace, is going to enter in and change everything. And every single person, if you ask every one of our family members, something happened that day that was, I've done 2 chairs my whole life, and in the presence of God at 2 chairs is fullness of joy. And so no matter what, if you didn't say, hey, I heard anything, because the enemy doesn't want you to hear something, you're in fullness of joy. Okay. And so when he comes in all surpassing peace, it's a totally different thing. And so on this day, he gives we were in praying for that kid who's 2 years old, and not knowing that he's going to get my grandson's liver.
Mm.
And then God then gives his 2 kidneys to a 42-year-old woman who had like 18 days to live. And she, off the 2 kidneys of a 13-month-old, didn't need dialysis, and she's perfect. They grow into the largest kidneys. Our family rejoiced for those families, right? And so my only thing is, what's crazy is that, yeah, so in this world you have trouble, but I'm telling you is that God walked through that with us every step of the way. And he would look at me and goes, hey, so listen, I got you. He says, watch. He says, this is going to be much bigger than you think. Watch. And he kept doing it. And so we kept having more miracles during the times that we were doing it. And then on the last day, we did something different than anybody else. We took it out public. And so my oldest daughter's an Instagram influencer. She has a thing. She had a really, hard trying to get going in life and didn't have any direction and didn't do it with her husband, and they were all in trouble. And then she's the last 7-8 years, all of a sudden she has like 450,000 people on Instagram. She's the Downtown Alley ALY, and she's just rocking it, but she takes it out wild. And we had on the honor walk day, last day when you give your organs, which is such an honor for this, all the doctors and nurses are all cheering you as you finish your last thing. And she put it to music, and 22 million people on TikTok watched that video.
Wow.
And so we had families who all during our week we would post, and they would tell us, hey, he's in a coma and he can hear you, and you've got to just wait. He just is going to, I'm praying he just wakes up. And I have some families that we're showing every morning how we stand and start to pray. And then we had a couple who looked and said, their 2 boys said, why don't we pray for Bo together as a family? And their mom and dad were considering divorce, and then they got back together as a result of starting to pray that whole week. I mean, God's just awesome.
Amazing.
And so I don't know how to explain it, but our family's doing good in this process. But I'll give you one other thing. I had to do 3 weeks earlier a commencement address. No one had ever asked me to. Have you ever done one of those?
No, still haven't.
No, me either. I didn't. But the president had read 2 chairs and was so overwhelmed at Dallas Baptist University. He asked me if I'd do it. And so I said, sure. And my number one tip was to tell them, in this world, you're going to have trouble as a graduate. So get ready. How you respond to this trouble is the key. And so I'm telling you about the book, Man's Search for Meaning, with Viktor Frankl, right? That his family had all died in the Nazi camp, and they killed his mom, his dad, his kids, everybody, all the way through. And then he said this quote that said, between the stimulus and your response is a space, and you get a point to do it. I had no idea. I was writing that to me, how I'm going to respond 3 weeks later.
Wow.
And so the good news in this process is this. Look, God's already doing great things. Our family, he's building up strong. He does it. Is it possible? A day in heaven's 1,000 years. So when I die, Bo is going to miss me 3 minutes.
Exactly.
And so we have a different picture when you look at things eternally than finite.
The timeline matters, right?
And I tell my mom's there, right? Who I wrote the whole book 2 chairs through. And I said, could you see Jesus bringing Bo in? There's my mom. She's got 25 great grandchildren. And then Jesus brings him in, and she's not seen one yet. Here he is. And then she picks him up. And do you think Jesus ever gets to hold him again?
That's right.
So life throws you curves. The question is, what do you do with it?
Wasn't that, I've heard that. I think it's a bit of a misconception when I hear people say this, God won't give you anything you can't handle. I don't think that's true. I think God won't give you anything he can't handle.
Right. That's so much better. And listen to me. Yeah. I mean, what I try to explain in 2 chairs is that, if I re-explain our faith, is that when Jesus died, you died, right? He put a new heart, a new mind in you, and you are now seated, SEATED, in heavenly places. Isn't that 2 chairs? Yes. And isn't the Lord's Prayer that as it is in heaven, it's going to be on earth? And he takes these chairs, comes down and makes an Ark of the Covenant in your house. Now, I know that list. Here's what I told these people here. Is the reason I told you about my precious Bo, who I consider our hero, is that half of the people who are listening have had something just as bad.
Right.
They just didn't tell anybody. And listen, you can't hold this alone. And my point is, listen, they're in heaven having a great day. So I should spend 5 more minutes being depressed and being this, or can I trust God? There's no in between here. And my point is, you have another family and you have other people, and our job is to lock arms and me pray with you and help you get through this. I mean, I think it's so important. There's 200 people who are listening here today that have just found out something, right? There's something just happened. And my whole point is, run to your 2 chairs. So I wrote 7 things of what to do in a time of crisis. Run to your 2 chairs, right? Get around your who, okay? Get to higher ground. Listen to me, as soon as we thought, hey, so seriously, the Beaudines here have had enough, the Burns is having enough trouble, so we're not going to get any more. More comes.
Right.
The question is, the enemy does not want Bob Beaudine speaking about 2 chairs and the power of who and helping people and encouraging them. He'd like me to fold like a chair. You ain't beating me. You ain't doing that. That ain't happening. Yep. My daughter, if I told you how proud I am of my daughter, Jenny, and my son-in-law, Rob, they are rocks. And so how is that possible? 2 chairs. You have to spend time. You got to know him. So he knew you before the foundation of the world. And that means that you talk to him. I know of Abraham Lincoln. I don't know him. I've read about him. But the difference is that I know there's a lot of gods, but there's only one that was resurrected and ascended. And he lives in you and has plans for you. And you know what they are? Jeremiah 29:11. They're good. They're prosperous. They have a future. They have a hope. And so our concept here is this. You know, I told someone, a basketball team, there's 27 or 28,000 days in an average man's life. You guys don't care. You're all young. You think you're invincible. I said, I've only got 2,842 left. And
so I got stuff to do.
I'm going to make something good out of everything I can, because this is the day. I'm going to rejoice. I'm going to be glad in it.
Well, let's do this this has been amazing, man. I just everything I could have hoped for, and I've gotten so much out of it. Let's do some rapid fire as we close here a little bit. Let's you tell me how you want to answer this, but I know you don't have favorites. But as you look at over the last couple of decades, who are some of the favorite folks that you've got a chance to place in high level positions that we would know that you're like, you know what, I was so that one really still kind of holds a significant place in my heart. Give us a couple of those people.
I mean, I just placed Deion Sanders at Colorado. That would be pretty good. I mean,
Deion Sanders
totally radically changed. I mean, what he's done, he's already got 30-some thousand fans that have all of a sudden are coming to their first practice. I mean, so they're raising money, doing things. He had 1,000 people who are 4 and 5 stars, people that wanted to actually come to his thing. I mean, a guy like Scott Drew is a game changer for a person. So the very first day we ever talked in 2003, we talked about him winning a national championship. He had to go get people off the intramural squad to come. He had to talk people who are international to come. I mean, it's just too funny in things. And so when you put in guys in your process like Bud Selig, you put people in who are, that you look at, who are big football coaches, basketball coaches, some of the people to whom I put in, there's a guy who's the athletic director right now, Rick George, who is at Colorado, but I placed him before that as the president of the Texas Rangers. And so I'd been on the board of the Rangers. What he did there was just unbelievable in doing deals and how he does it, but just how he carries himself. He's such a quality person. But I've had chances to, I've had a guy who was, Len Coleman, who's one of the fantastic guys, placed him as on a board of directors for one of the big game companies that are out there in the world. But he used to be the president of the American League. And so you try to get people who do things in the other. But, so in my office, I have all these fantastic basketballs and footballs and baseballs, because I placed 90 coaches. So all my coaches, who have done something, I placed 54 of the 100 athletic directors, right? And so all of those people are so fantastic. And so every single one of them are like rock stars beyond anything. I mean, of what they've done and how they've achieved it in where they are. Ian McCaw at Liberty is just an amazing human being. I mean, I've got hundreds of them. I could just sit and listen to, but I put all these, I have all these basketballs and all these footballs and all these helmets. And if you come in my office, I collect friends. They're my heroes. I don't try to go get the biggest name person. So some of the names to which I want to list like 60 people that I placed that are so big. I just did the head of real estate for a guy that I consider to be one of the superstars, Colin Fitzgibbons at Hunt Oil, and what he's done just since he's been there is transforming, people who come into organization and have to turn around to trouble. Mick Cronin is now at UCLA as head basketball coach, who was at Cincinnati and had to turn around something that big. Mike Anderson, all these people. But I like to put people like, when you come into my office, and at some point you're going to sign a baseball, right? And you're going to say, hold it, I don't get to do it. You have like Pete Rose in here. You've got like, you've got Troy Aikman on this thing. And you're going to sign. If you played at that school in any which way, I'm going to get you on that helmet. Why? Because I don't see any difference between one star and another. I mean, if you'd had breakfast with me this morning, Carmen, who's been at Glen Eagles Country Club, is one of the greatest human beings who serves, who helps us, and I love her like she's my family, right? So it's all the same.
That's awesome. Well, this has been just a treat. It's you made my whole month already for March, and we haven't even gotten there yet. So this has been awesome. I love it. Consider you a friend now already, right? So that's what's beautiful about spending this kind of time together. So tell people where they can learn more about you and maybe book you to speak, or just kind of understand a little bit more how to be in touch with you. Point us in the right direction.
So go to bobbeaudine.com. And just my name, Bob Beaudine, BEAUDINE.com. And that's kind of consolidates that to gets to my Eastman and Beaudine, my executive search firm for people who are saying, hey, oh my gosh, I lost my CFO. I need my president of this new company. And so I always find that people, I get, like you do, 90% of mine is repeat, but I get 10% of people who come in and just said, hey, I heard you, you're hired. I'm bringing you in because I gotta do something transformational. And I have to do a huge turnaround. Okay. And then, so number two is I'm on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. And so for the last 17 years, God at Two Chairs has given me a thought that says, hey, get on and post. And so my whole posts are to encourage you and to lift you. And so come on in and join us and say, hey, you listened, and message me and say, hey, I heard you on Jeff's show and this. And what's funny is I'll respond. And so I always tell people is, if I didn't do it the first time, do it again, and I'll do it, and I'll catch you the next. The issue is that we all live crazy lives, but
right, for sure.
But we try. And so anyway, I cannot tell you how honored I am to be on your show. Thank you for letting me be on it, and congratulations on what you're doing. I mean, you're making such a difference as a coach. You're making such a difference as a podcast. I mean, you're so good at this. It's so easy for you, but I can see why you're so successful. And thank you for Matt and all the team.
Well, thank you. And for those of everything that we have, if you're listening to the show right now, you can go to the show page and all of his socials on there. The website links are on there. The links to his two amazing books, The Power of Who and Two Chairs, is on there. Go soak up everything Bob Beaudine, because it's rare to find someone like that you can follow that's going to have such direct impact on your life. So we're going to have you on again sometime, probably this season, because this has been so good.
Tell Jenny and your staff also how fantastic she is.
Oh, I will definitely pass that on. And we know she's a rock star as well as the rest of the group. So thank you very much, Bob, and welcome. We wanted to welcome you into the Driving Change podcast, not only for today, but we want to welcome you in again in the future and make sure you're part of our family now moving forward.
I so appreciate it. Blessings on you and everybody.
Thank you.